Another top 8 here. These are the top 8 worst limited cards of all time. So to make this list, the card has to be terrible, completely unplayable, and actually hurt you when you play it. Because there's a lot of cards in limited that does very little, or is like a terrible creatures. I'm talking like Zephyr Spirit, Chimney Imp. There's also like Bog Hoodlums, really horrible creatures. But they are still have power and toughness to do something. So there's gonna be very few creatures on this list. But there are some. So the card also gets on this list if it kind of looks tempting. There are some real stinkers that look terrible and are terrible. But there are some cards that might look somewhat promising, but actually end up losing you the game more times than they are worth it, which is basically 0. So first we have an honorable mention, that is Harmless Offering. This is 2 in a red for a sorcery. An opponent gains control of target permanent you control. So there is very little use for this in limited. In constructed, you can give your opponent Demonic Pact and make them lose to the 4th chapter. But in limited, you're not going to be able to do very much with this. You're just going to give away a permanent and your opponent's going to be ahead. If you're trying to give your opponent a permanent that hurts them, it's for the first time. First of all, it's very hard to find one in Eldritch Moon, Shadows of Innistrad Limited, but also they can find like a sacrifice effect or a bounce effect, and then you're down to nothing. But I think most people realize that this card's not going to do much, so it's just an honorable mention. On number 8, we have Soul Gorger Org. This is 3 red for a 6/6 Trampler, which is back in the day was insane. These days it would be good, you would be interested in it, but you couldn't stomach the cost here. And the cost is when it comes to play, you lose all but 1 life. So you are going down to 1 life. And then when it leaves play, you get gain life equal to the life lost when it came into play. So you are going down to 1 to get a 6/6 Trampler into play. That is just a recipe for disaster. If you want to have any burn spell, any flyer you can't block, any way to give something unblockable, more creatures than you on the board, you need to be at least -1 on the board when you cast this. Otherwise, your opponent just gonna attack with everything and kill you. And then any removal spell that can take care of any of your creatures just kills you. And for what? An above rate 5-drop. So this is a card that look, maybe I can play this against a control deck. No, it's just an absolutely horrible card, and you're gonna not be able to cast it most of the time. And the times when you cast it, you're often gonna lose. Alright, at number 7, we have One with Nothing. This is black mana for a sorcery, and you discard your hand. And you may think, yeah, maybe I can have some graveyard synergies. Maybe I can have a way to discard my cards. No, there isn't. The reason this isn't higher on the list is that everyone knows this card is horrible. There are some things you can do with it in constructed, with dredge cards potentially, but in limited, this card is just horrible. Either it hurts you or it does nothing, and both things are obviously horrible. Number 6 is Adder Rift, an enchantment from Invasion. 1 red-green, so already kind of hard to cast. At the beginning of your upkeep, discard a card at random. There is no May, you have to discard a card at random. And if it's a creature card, put that card into play unless an opponent pays 5 life. So this card probably wouldn't be very good even if your opponent couldn't pay 5 life. But the fact that your opponent can pay 5 lives to stop it, and you have to discard a card at random, means this card just hurts you in so many ways. You're going to lose a card every upkeep. You're not going to be able to get the creature in play if it's important. And if it's a kind of a bad creature, your opponent can just say, okay, you can have that. So this is just a horrible card. It hurts you. There is no drawing cards on it. There is no May ability. And your opponent even gets an option. So all around a terrible card. Number 5 is Sky Swallower. 3 blue for a 8/8 flyer. Okay, so now you are actually getting paid. 5 mana for an 8/8 flyer would be insane even in these days. But when it comes to play, your opponent gains control of all permanents you control. All permanents. So that includes lands. So you're not going to be able to cast any more spells. Your opponent gets all your creatures, all your enchantments, all artifacts. And I guess back in the day, Planeswalkers didn't exist. But yeah, so for this to work, you're going to have to kill your opponent with an 8/8 flyer. And for that to work, you probably need to do some work beforehand. Because if your opponent is at 20, you're going to have your opponent have 3 turns to deal with this, because it doesn't have haste. And your opponent now has all your lands, all your creatures, all your other permanents. So this is just a horrible card. I think that if this didn't say all your permanents, you got to keep your lands, then maybe you could play this on an empty board and then you could have a game plan. But the fact that your opponent gets all your lands is what kills this card and makes it an absolute horrible card. Alright, number 4 is the Magic Mirror, a legendary artifact, 6 blue. And this spell costs 1 less to cast for each instant and or sorcery in your graveyard. You have no maximum hand size. At the beginning of your upkeep, you put a knowledge counter on it, then you draw a card for each knowledge counter on it. So you're gonna play this, hopefully it's cheaper, and then you're gonna get to draw an extra card every turn, then it's 2, and then it's 3, and then it's 4, and there is no way to stop this. So not only are you paying an incredibly expensive card that's also fragile, it also kills you because there is no hopping off the train. You can't stop this train once it gets rolling. So you're gonna get decked very soon. And at first it's gonna look great. I'm gonna get to draw these extra cards, but very soon you're gonna be in danger of decking, and you also have to pay a very big front up cost. You have to fill your decks with instant resources to make this even castable. And then when you do, you get this payoff of drawing extra cards that you're not going to be able to leverage very often, because often if you have to enable this type of card, you have to play cantrips, cards that draw extra cards, fill your graveyard, maybe mill yourself, and then you're going to be even more susceptible to the milling out. So really bad card. Alright, at number 3 we have somewhat surprising to some of you, but it's actually Dark Depths. Dark Depths is a legendary land, and it comes into play with 10 ice counters on it. And you can pay 3 mana to remove an ice counter from it. And then when it has no ice counters on it, you sacrifice it to make a 20/20 flying indestructible Marit Laga. But the reason why this is on the list is that it doesn't tap for mana. So when you're playing this card, you are actually hurting yourself. You're playing a card that doesn't tap for mana, takes your land drop that turn, and then you have to play in total 30 mana to get the creature. And in Cold Snap Limited, there is no way to cheat with this. In Constructor, there's Vampire Hex Mage, Thespian Stage, there was even Adder Snap, I remember back in the day. But in Cold Snap Limited, which is actually a pretty fast format, which has a lot of ripple cards, snow payoffs, you're actually hurting yourself really bad when you play this card. So if you ever draft Cold Snap and you rare draft Dark Depths because it's a money card, do not put this card in your deck. It's going to hurt you really bad to play it, because you're never going to be able to get the avatar. The format is too fast for that. And 30 mana. You're hurting yourself by skipping a land drop, and having a land in play. And skipping a land drop in limited is huge, because you're going to lose a mana every turn from the future when you play it. So if you play this on turn 1, not that I think anyone will, but then on turn 2 you're only going to have 1 mana, on turn 3 you're going to have 2 mana, so it's going to hurt you every time after that. Alright, at number 2 we have 2 cards actually, Geth, Fane of Contracts and Heartless Summoning. Those have one thing in common, and is that they give all your creatures -1/-1. Geth, Fane of Contracts is 1 black for a 3/4, and other creatures you control get -1/-1. You can pay 1 black, tap it, and put a creature into play from your graveyard, and if it would be put into a graveyard, again, exile it. And Heartless Summon is a card that says that creature spells you control cost 2 less to cast. And these do things from the looks of it. They do very important things. Making all your creatures cost 2 less in limited is huge. It's like having 2 Duskwatch recruiters in play. And being able to reanimate your creatures looks awesome too. The only problem is that giving all your creatures -1/-1 is a devastating effect. There is actually a card that costs 5 mana, Curse of Death, so that give all your opponent's creatures -1/-1. That is considered a bomb in Innistrad Limited, a very powerful limited set. So here you are actually hurting yourself. You're putting a bomb enchantment into play on your opponent's controllers, give all your creatures -1/-1. And it almost doesn't matter what these cards give you. You're gonna be completely crippled by this effect. Giving you all your creatures -1/-1 may look like, whatever, I got some big creatures in my deck, it doesn't matter. It actually hurts you way more than you think. Those of you who ever played against Glorious Anthem, you know how powerful it is to give all your creatures +1/+1. And actually giving your creatures -1/-1, your opponents, is even better than the Glorious Anthem because it also kills all X1s. So whereas a Glorious Anthem doesn't kill your opponent's creatures, something that gives all your creatures -1/-1 actually kills your creatures. So this is a very horrible cards, and they look kind of, maybe I can play them, but these are some of the worst cards ever. Okay, so what is the worst card in Limited? My vote goes to Leveler. This is 5 mana for a 10/10, and when it enters the battlefield, exile your library. Does not have trample, does not have flying, and does not have haste, which it cannot use. So when you cast this card, you're just gonna lose next turn. And if it had like trample and haste, maybe it would be worth a risk. It actually would be pretty good, but it doesn't have anything like trample and haste. You have to give all that manually. So there's no way this can ever be worth it, because it's a card that does absolutely nothing unless you are dead next turn. And even then, it may not even be guaranteed to do anything. So if it had trample, at least have any keyword to maybe only in one type of equipment. This is a card that is uncastable unless you have something that gives it exactly haste, trample, or flying. And even then, your opponent can interact with it. So it's just the worst card in Limited ever. If you cast it, you're gonna lose the game next turn. Almost every time. So what do you think are the worst Limited cards of all time? There are a lot of candidates, but I wanted to focus on cards that actually hurt you when you play them. So thank you for watching.